Okay, we are on. Yeah, so we have Rachel McDaniel tonight, and I'm really excited about this. Rachel's written 4 novels, and I'm sure she'll be telling us a little bit about some of them as she teaches tonight. But I just remember sitting, I mean, I even remember where I was sitting, and I was reading The Red Canary, and I was really like literally on the second page, and I was like, this is going to be a great book, because I was there. I was right there in the nightclub. You know, there was the fringe, there was the smoke, there was the sounds, the accent. I mean, I was totally there. So I am like, I want to know all your secrets. So Rachel, yeah, take it away, and we look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Awesome. So I'm really excited to be here, and I just want to thank you for asking me, and hopefully I can give you guys some insight. I do not even come close to thinking I have got it concerning writing. There's just so much to learn, and my furnace just kicked on. So if it's loud and you need me to speak louder, just go like this, like, come on, Rach, speak up. But yeah, so we're going to talk about word building. And the thing about word building is that actually, when I started writing, I wasn't very good at it, at word building. I did okay with dialogue. I did okay with plots, but it just seems like my descriptions and my just the surroundings was just blah. And so honestly, I came by 2 things, and I actually wrote it down. So in case, I just want to preface this because we're all mommies here. Yesterday and the day before, I only got 3.5 hours of sleep because my daughter was awake and I couldn't get her back to sleep. So hopefully I will be able to string a couple sentences together. And also, I have a tendency to talk super fast. In like 4th grade, I used to like pride myself in like speaking fast contests and try to like speak faster than all my classmates. And I think it ruined me for life. So if you need me to slow down, just say slow, Rach, and I will totally understand, because that's what my husband does. But in word building, there is different layers. And honestly, the main, it's almost, we need to activate different senses, because in word building, the main key one is always sight. Like, what do you see? But sometimes we need to venture beyond that. Like in The Red Canary, during that time, Pittsburgh was just a mess. There was only like a few days of sunshine because the rolling mills and the steel factories just, they had smoke vapors, and it actually would leave soot. Like the women that would hang up their clothes, they would actually have to dust off their clothes because there was so much soot in the air. But with all that, it gave the sensory of smell. There was a sulfur smell, like a rotten egg smell. And so I chose to use that one in The Canary about the sense of smell, and even texture. Like soot has a certain texture. So to go beyond sight and include other senses really helps take your story to a different level. And especially like whenever readers can identify with the certain textures or the senses. One thing most of you probably know, but I have a daughter that is on the spectrum. And the way that her mind works, this really helped me be better as a writer. Because I'm just going to say a scenario here. We go to the mall food court, and the way our brains are, we automatically tune out everything until like everything's kind of like a hum or like an indistinct chatter. But how my daughter is that she takes in everything. She'll hear the guy scraping the grill at Charlie's Steakery. She'll hear the kids whining and screaming in the play place. She'll hear the lady cackling, laughing behind her. She hears everything, and she is almost like a sensory overload. she'll have all the different smells come at her from the Chinese place, from Chick-fil-A, from different places. And then you have all the sights, the signs, the kids running past her. So it is definitely a sensory overload for her. So we don't do them all food court because she she struggles. But with having her, I'm able to see and pinpoint different things, like how is she seeing this world? How is she, and it helps me open my eyes to see different things that my mind would normally tune out. And then sometimes those little things end up being big things, especially in a mystery. Like when you're writing mysteries, they can be different clues or this or that, but I'm digressing. So it really helps seeing through her eyes, feeling, hearing, smelling, there's the different things, and then picking different parts that you want to use. Now, I'm also going to share this. When I first started writing the Red Canary, it was sensory overload. I had it all in there. And I really had to weed out some parts because you can do too much. You can overwrite. So in your word building, you do not want to overwrite the scene and include everything. Because really, we don't take in everything. We don't always remember what so-and-so is wearing, but we might remember our shoes sticking to the floor because someone spilled pop or something like that. So you don't want to dump everything into the scene. You could, in your rough draft, you can put it in there and then see what works. Another thing that helped me that I will also, this actually, I believe this was I think this is Danielle Smith's question about adding in the details through the lens of your character. I was reading a craft book and they were talking about how different people view things differently. One, because of their backgrounds, because of their mood, what their circumstances are going in, memories that might trigger something. So you take a playground and you have one person that comes in and they see, and everything's bright because they love playgrounds, reminds them of their childhood, reminds them of, meeting their best friend or something like that. And so they'll see the lights glinting off the slide. They'll see, different things. And you use descriptive words that reflect their emotion. If they're happy, if they're content, then you use happy words. Like when you're talking about the ball, you can say a cherry bubblegum ball or something like that. Just different things that help view through that character and how they're feeling. Now you take another character in the same exact playground, in the same exact scene, but they might see it completely differently because maybe they had a traumatic experience on that playground. And so their descriptive words would be more gloom, would be more like maybe they would see the slide and talk about and think about, the sun searing it or the sun, just different things, or they'll see the grass drooping over, being scorched by the sun. They'll hear the swing creaking, almost like death's door, things like that. So you can present the scene, and you should present the scene using the descriptive words that match your character's mood, that match how they are feeling, or they might have a backstory that it's a playground, but you know what I mean. So that's one that really helped me. That little tidbit in that craft book about mirroring the scene to your character's emotions. Another thing that really helps me with description, because when I first started, like I said, I wasn't very good with description, and I always find myself using cliche descriptions, like the ones that you always see when you read. I don't have to, you guys probably know which ones I'm talking about, but just different ones that. So I wanted to venture out from the cliche descriptions, and I started reading poetry. And it really, I really recommend doing that. Reading poetry to help with your descriptions. because it takes what like like something you see almost every day, but it puts like an artistic feel to it, like and then you add in your character's emotions to how they're seeing it, and then it just all ties together. Like in Above the Fold, my hero Cole, he just found out that one of his mentors was murdered, and he was going back to his office, the dead guy's office, to collect one of his belongings that was left there. And as he's approaching, he's somber, you know, he's a little confused as to why the guy was murdered. And he sees the icicles hanging off of the building, and he describes them as jagged teeth or something like that, or jaws, slicing to bit all of his whatever. But what we took something that, I mean, I have icicles hanging off my house right now, but something you always see, and then you can make your like gnarly hands, gnarly fingers, jagged fingernails, jagged claws, and you just take it and you just add a little spin to it, and it makes it so much deeper. And because he was in a somber mood, he saw those icicles as claws or jaws. I can't remember what it was, but that really helps in setting the tone of the scene, because your descriptive words are powerful. Be very choosy and deliberate with them, because it, like I said, it sets the tone. It gives the reader that vibe, that feel. And that goes along with creating the world in your story. I had to research a lot. I grew up only 20 minutes away from Pittsburgh, and I had to research so much. And I'm like, I didn't even know this happened here. But it really helped to know the area. And I took some, because I grew up there, I had the preconceived notion of what Pittsburgh was to me. I had to step out of that and see it through my character's eyes. Now, Jennifer, you had the question about Vera, like how I made her sound so right for the character in the time period. A lot of it was through her dialogue and the research of the era. Now, Vera, she was a speakeasy singer. And sorry, I'm gonna turn my phone on silent. Unless someone trying to contact me. Okay, there's no one in front of you. I want to make sure it wasn't one of you trying to tell me something. Vera is a speakeasy singer with a traumatic past. And she is actually foreign to Pittsburgh, and she starts working in a speakeasy. I had to research the slang for that, because during the 1920s, a lot of our terms that we say today stem out of the jazz culture. Like some of the things, like most people probably don't say blow my top anymore or flip your lid or things like that, but that's all from the jazz era. And so I had to research the slang and not do overkill with that, because you can do so much to try to make it authentic that it actually detracts. So you have to kind of, it's an artful balance between trying to make it super authentic, but not going overboard where you lose your reader and you're like, what are they even talking about? And they have to go up and check Google to know what they're saying. So that's very important as well. And also with Vera and her dialogue, there's a rhythm to her talking. She was a singer. She was very musically inclined. And so whenever I did her dialogue, I would read it aloud and read it in the scene. And if it sounded off, I almost don't know how I can put it into words, but if it sounded stilted, or if it made me trip over it, my tongue, then I would change it. And then I would read it again until it flowed. And there was like a cadence to it. And that's how I tried to make her authentic to even her musical background by being a singer, and also that rhythm of the jazz era. So that's how I tried to make her. And also, your surroundings are huge in shaping how you talk. And like I said, I grew up 20 minutes from Pittsburgh. And if anyone knows about Pittsburgh, they have their own language. We say yins all the time. Y-I-N-Z. It's like you guys, like you wins, yins. And for the longest time, I legit thought that was a word. Like, are yins guys coming? You know? And it wasn't until I met some people from out of town and they're like, what did you just say? and there's actually a whole list of things that I actually thought was how you say it. You know, instead of saying creek, we'd say crick. Instead of saying, you know, wash, we say whoosh. And then instead of rubber band, we say gum bands. So your surroundings, your character's surroundings will very much influence how they think, how they talk, and like how they view things. So that's how it was in Pittsburgh. And it's funny because right now I'm writing a contemporary, it's a split time, whatever, where the contemporary is in Pittsburgh and the historical is in Pittsburgh, and I get to incorporate some of the yins in the contemporary, so I'm having fun with that. But I actually did take notes. I was proud of myself because I knew I was gonna trip over some stuff. I answered that about the immersive details. Okay, so when I was on IG today, Instagram, I came across this meme, or someone posted something, and it just really hit me. It said, a historian, you guys might have saw this one, a historian tells you what happened, a novelist shows you what it felt like. And I was like, that is so true. You, as a writer, you bring them into the scene. They smell the sulfur air. They feel the wind on their face. They, if they're walking through, on the spit stains sidewalk, they feel the crunch of dry leaves or things like that. You bring them in by using sensory details to basically create a movie in their mind. That's always a goal for me, is that when people read it, it's almost like a movie reel in their imagination. And things that could detract from that are overwriting or underwriting. It's just such an artful balance because you don't want to describe everything, but you don't want to not describe anything, if that makes you sense. You need to establish them, give them a root in that scene, but hand pick what you want them to see, what you want them to feel, what you want them to hear. And then do that through the lens of your character, of how they're feeling, and so yeah, so it shows you what it felt like. I actually have in The Mobster's Daughter, which was my last release, I actually included a real historical event. In 1924, there was a trolley strike. And because there was a trolley strike, now Pittsburgh at the time relied a lot upon cable cars for them to get back and forth. Well, the workers walked out on midnight the night before. And so that next work day, everyone had to drive or they weren't going to get to work. And so they had new tunnels that were built, the Liberty tunnels. And they actually got congested because there was so much traffic that there's usually not. But what happened is that they did not put in a ventilating system. There was no ventilation. So when traffic stopped in the middle of a tunnel where there's no ventilation, there's carbon monoxide. That's my septic tank. You hear that? Anyways, there was carbon monoxide, toxic fumes getting unleashed by hundreds of cars inside this tunnel. And no one knew what was going on. And everyone was in absolute panic. So my heroine, who had a traumatic experience of getting trapped when she was younger, she was in hysterics because she is in this dark place in a dark tunnel, and she felt like the walls are closing in. She struggled with claustrophobia. And so I painted the scene through her eyes and how she felt, like the walls closing in, about her, over her, how she coped with it. And then I had another scene where it was the heroes. And I actually had to do some research of carbon monoxide and what it does. And my father-in-law, he works in heating and air conditioning, so he's able to tell me, because he has a carbon monoxide detector, and he deals a lot with that. And so I got to pick his brain about things like that. But I was able to take a real event and shove my characters in it, and have her view it through her traumatic experience, if that makes any sense. And another thing that I brought in, I don't know if you guys are historical writers or not, but is actually real people. And people, I've had other writers ask me how to do that, because you're like, what if they have relatives that are still alive? What, the thing with incorporating historical figures is usually paint them, do your research. And if you have authentic thing of how they were, like in The Gilded Lady by Elizabeth Camden, the heroine was the first lady's secretary. And the first lady had issues, but and she was cranky, and she was, back and forth, and she was just irrational. But there was historical evidence that she was like that. So that gave Elizabeth the artistic license to make her that way, because that's how she was, if that makes any sense. And normally, if there's no historical facts about these people, then they usually tell you to paint them in a favorable light, and just to honor their memory. And but if you don't need them, then just put in your own characters. If in doubt, just put in your own characters. But if you want to use real people, do your research and then incorporate them. Like in The Mobster's Daughter, I had 2 or 3 real life people. One was Harold Arlen, and he was actually the very first broadcaster. And they actually called him the Voice of America, because he was, his voice went across America through KDKA. And so I did a lot of research on him, and looked up different articles, and where he was actually chatting about an interview that he did with Babe Ruth. And in that interview, he said Babe Ruth got mic fright. And so Harold actually had to take the paper and read Babe Ruth's responses and act like Babe Ruth. And he actually got letters and phone calls about people just saying, "Oh, he sounds so nice," or whatever. And he said it just really, tickled him, because it was him. So because I had that document, I was able to add that into The Mobster's Daughter in that story, and actually played off of it a bit. I went down the line with, like, I had, but I also included fictional. I had my heroine have a signed bat from him. I don't know if he did that or not, but he was there and he had an interview. And so I took that artistic license that she had a signed bat from him, and she used that as her wooden protector, because she lived alone in an apartment in Pittsburgh. So including actual facts and weaving them into your story also takes it into a next level. Because I've actually had people in like reviews or in emails saying how much they look forward to reading my author's notes, because to know what's real and what's not. And that's actually my favorite part to write, other than the story, is the author's notes, because it's like when you get to unleash, your inner geek and tell a different story. It's like that. Let me see. Okay. Another thing about word building is like I said, you put in with different layers. If you have a character that is new to the area, they're not going to know everything about the area, which is a given, but sometimes, we just tend to write things. But so you might want to, like, if you have a character that's new to an area, they might see things that other people, I'm trying to see how to say this in, like, they might not know what something is, and so they'll describe it differently. And then as the story progresses, they get to know the area, they get to feel it, and that's a hard balance an artful balance. But if you do it well, then your reader will learn the area with your character, and it's so fun to do things like that. And honestly, that's how it is with the romance, right? They don't, not like on first acquaintance, they might hate the person. And then after different interactions, they end up falling in love with them. That's how it is even with it could be with your world. The character could hate that area. And then through different events or interactions or memories, especially if they, meet their significant other, then they start getting attached. And that's what I meant about layers. You start out maybe with just a little bit. And then as your character interacts in the area, interacts with different characters, then things build, and they might develop an emotional attachment to the area. They might end up loving it, or they may end up hating it more. And all this is through your descriptions and through your scenes. I've heard this, and I totally believe it. If a scene doesn't move your story along, then cut it, because pacing is everything. That's how you keep readers from skipping over your stuff. You keep making them want more. Don't give them time to skim. And often we make the mistake of putting huge info dumps of detail in your word building that, I call them monster paragraphs, that kind of overwhelms them and they just skip over it. So that's why it's important to tie the details either into the dialogue, if they're walking along the street, and she trips over something that ties it to the area. You are able to, maybe she trips over a piece of trash. That right there tells you that the area isn't really kept very well, and so you're able to sneak in different details, but you keep the momentum going. And that's really important. Instead of just sitting there and just describing the area being filled with trash, or you can even incorporate your sensory of the smell. Maybe she smells like rotting garbage, or and we all know that smell. That's something people can relate to, whenever you leave chicken in the trash for a couple of days, it's just something that people all can relate to. But it's such a strong, it starts a strong sense to use. Like I said, to venture beyond sight is takes your story to a different level, because everyone relies on sight so much. But there's an Atticus poem where he talks about falling in love. He would have fallen in love with his eyes closed. And that's kind of how you want to present some scenes. You close your eyes and you think of what other things that can leap out at you: smell, texture, feel, things like that, hearing. And that's how you can layer a scene. But be careful not to overwrite and include them all. It's just such a delicate balance. But another thing is read it out loud. Read out loud and close your eyes and see if you can picture it. Or if it's just so many things coming at you, then weed some stuff out and then read it again. And then and that will help that'll help you with editing. Because me and my friends joke about how editing never ends, and really you can edit, and there's like no end to it. But for me, because one of my questions that I get is, how do you know when a scene is done? And that is such a hard question, because I go by feel. I just like, does it feel right? And if there's something off or something wrong, I might not even know what it is yet. I just let it sit for a little bit, and then I go back and I revisit. And sometimes it's just like the littlest tweak, like maybe a sentence, the dialogue was unnatural, didn't sound like something my character would say. And then I fix it, and then it's almost like it feels right. And then I go back, and then I go to my next scene. That's how I edit a lot. I go by my gut. Does it sound right? Does it feel right? And then I go through it all over again. I edit, and then I go through it and I weed stuff out, and I read it over, and then I actually sent to my critique partner, see if she sees anything, and then I revisit it again. And then when it's done, I'm like, okay, it feels good. I can go to the next one. And honestly, I struggle with that. I like editing more than I like writing rough drafts. I struggle because I want it to look pretty. And like I have to push myself, especially when you're on a deadline. You don't have the liberty to polish a scene and then go on, because when you're writing your rough draft, everyone's heard this scenario. You throw the sand into the box. That's your rough draft. Making the sand castle is your editing. And right now I'm throwing sand into the box, and it's messy. And so that's where I'm at right now in my writing. I'm like, I just want to edit. But here's the thing. If you edit and spend so much time and then you finish the rest of your story, you might not need that chapter. You might not need that scene. And I've wasted so much time editing scenes, racking my brain over something that, gets cut on the threshing floor. So I would save that scene and put it in my newsletter. This deleted scene. I'm like, I need to get some use out of this. Like in the Red Canary, there is a scene that I absolutely loved, because a lot of the Red Canaries, from about the quarter of the way on, it takes place in the Allegheny Mountains. And my family I passed the majority of my childhood in the Allegheny Mountains. My family has a cabin there, and it's just gorgeous. It's like I just can go there to breathe because it's just beautiful. And so there was we called it the Swinging Bridge, and it was a bridge and it went over a creek, whatever you guys call it. And it gave the illusion that it was swinging, but because the creek was going so fast underneath it, that's why it gave the illusion. But it was like the worst looking footbridge you've ever seen. It was missing slats. It looks like it was going to fall apart in a heavy wind, but we crossed it anyways. And I just had so many fond memories of the Swinging Bridge. So I put it in the Red Canary, and I edited it and I loved it. They did some major flirting on that bridge. And actually had them do like a trust walk where the hero was trying to get the heroine to trust him. So he had her tie her handkerchief around his eyes, and he had her lead him over the bridge, which had several slats missing and he can fall through. And so I loved that scene, but my editor did not. She said, it slows the story. So I had to cut it, but I was really emotionally attached to that scene. But that's what I was talking about. You can spend so much time on a scene that gets cut. I said all that to say that. So like in your rough draft, push through. I'm talking to myself as I'm telling you this, just push through. You'll get a chance to make it pretty later. And then when you go back to do your editing, that's where you build your world. That's where you just polish it up, make it pretty, add in all the fun stuff. And then you just progress chapter by chapter if that's how you edit. Some people I know some of my friends, writer friends, they edit out of order. And it's just personal preference. I edit in order just because that's just the way my mind goes. But sometimes when people experience, they get stalled in their story, they'll skip to a favorite part and they'll do that. And so that way there's no lull in time in their writing. So it's just personal preference. But the editing is where you create your world mostly. You get and the rough draft is when you're starting to feel for it, when you start to learn your characters, learn their quirks, learn their triggers, learn their fears, learn their goals and hopes, learn how they feel about other characters, learn how they feel about where they are in the setting, where they are, like Pittsburgh or whatever else, how they feel about it, how they interact. Are they shy? Are they introvert? Are they extrovert? That's you don't really know that when you first start a story. Well, you might, but you might have a strong suspicion of how you want your characters to be. But the first draft, the rough draft, is when you're getting to know them and getting to, and you're getting your plot down, you're getting your story down and getting to know how you want it to look. It's just like a painter, how they have a sketch and then they do things in different layers, but you don't want to judge your writing ability by the very beginning. It's a process. And and that's why I have to tell myself that all the time, like, Rach, it's not going to be perfect right now. Just give it some time, let it marinate in your brain, and then write it all down and then go back and shape it up. And like I said, editing is where the word building really starts. So that's pretty much all I can think of to say. Does anyone have any questions at all?
Okay, so I'm going to put you on the spot here. The Mobster's Daughter has one of the best kiss scenes I've ever read. So a lot of us write stories that either are romance, have a romantic element. So give us some ideas about using detail in a kiss scene. How do we, or a love scene of some kind, how do we incorporate some sensory details and things in an appropriate way, but that make it a little more than just, they kissed?
Right. Okay. Writing kissing scenes are one of my favorites, and not because of the physical attributes, but because of all that they've overcome to get to that point, all the obstacles, and especially in The Mobster's Daughter, where it was a forbidden romance. They came from families that, star-crossed lovers kind of thing. So you build up the tension. You build up that moment. It's not, the kissing scene didn't start there. The kissing scene started when they first met, because you're working your way all the way to that moment. And all the obstacles they are to overcome. So you include that in your kissing scene. You don't need to get all detailed. You can if you want to, but the emotion is a huge part of the kissing scene. And in The Mobster's Daughter, if I don't want to give up too many spoilers, but it doesn't really matter, I guess. Whenever they go to kiss, leading up to that, Rhett finds out that Kate is staying in Pittsburgh, and he does not want to give, and Rhett has a roguish past. He's a reformed rake kind of way. And he doesn't want to give her any, and they just decided, because she's in so much danger, that she's going to stay with him until it got resolved, because there were threats on her life. So he didn't want to give my heroine any misgivings about staying with him. And so he's sitting perfectly still while she's trying to gauge his interest in her. And so there's like a miscommunication there. And then they overcome that. And then the floodgates open and, they come together and kiss. But read it aloud. If it makes you cringe, change it. If you feel like something's too short, then sit on that moment and expound on it. Like the emotions, what is he feeling here? Like, does he hold her as if he's not letting her go? And I know everyone reads that. That's in a lot, but that's something I can come up on the top of my head. But, does he does he kiss her forehead, and you almost feel like he's looking out as if he's wants to ward off anything that would try to harm her. Things that would bring in the attributes of your character. Are they a protector? Then that would be something that they would do. Are they fun loving, or then they might incorporate that in the kiss or something like that. But the main thing about kiss scenes is that it's way more than the physical. I can't stress that enough, because I've read kissing scenes where you kind of can't wait for it, and then it's just like, that's it, and then it's not to disparage other authors, but it just needs to have substance. It's not a kissing scene just for the sake of having a kissing scene, if that makes any sense. There's a reason behind it. Their relationship reached that point, and now it's only going to grow from there, or it's going to tank. And above the fold, after they had their kissing scene, it tanked. So there's just so much to incorporate that goes beyond, and that's where you can explore the other senses. Now, in the kissing scene, it's definitely about the feeling, but being that close to him, she might smell his cologne that reminded her when they first met, or something like that, where you can tie in different moments and take in that sensory kind of thing. Or if she's that close to his face and she sees a scar on his eye from whenever he, tripped in defending her, or something like that, you can include that. Because when your characters are that close, it's definitely a different perspective. So you can definitely expound on that as well. So does that help? Does that make any sense? Okay. Is there any other questions?
I have a question. I was curious because you said you were talking about earlier slang and the way they speak and the way they talk. I am always curious about accents, because if I have a character, I've read some that it's just brutal to just read through. I can't understand what they're saying because the accent is strong, and they write that in there. Right. But then I've read it the other way, where they just kind of say they have an accent, but they sound like they're speaking normal. So I'm curious, what's like a happy medium giving enough of that?
That is a really good question. And it's actually really hard to answer because, okay, here's the thing. When you're reading, like I read a lot of Regency, and how I read it, I don't read the English accents in my head. I read them like as almost an American accent. But when I read like a Scottish, whenever they like say ye and laird and things like that, then I can hear the brogue. I can hear the lilt. It's definitely, when done well, it's brilliant, and it adds to the story. When done not so well, it detracts, and it's almost like a reader hiccup, if that makes any sense. Accents are difficult to master because you don't, like I said, to make it authentic, it might be overkill. You don't want to have every word heavily accented. But like I said earlier, there's a rhythm and a cadence to, especially in Scottish brogue. And like reading it out loud will definitely help. And if you hiccup over it in speaking it, then your reader's going to hiccup over it in reading it. So have it roll off the tongue. If it rolls off the tongue well, then it's going to work. If that makes any sense. Kate Breslin's, I think it's High as the Heavens. She does that. She has a Scottish hero, and that lilt is amazing. The rhythm is spot on. You can definitely, there's no, doesn't trip up. Recently, I think it's Heart in the Highlands by Heidi Kimball, I think. Yeah. She does that very well. And the heroine is English and the hero is Scottish, and she ends up kind of talking like him at the end. It's funny because, and that's what happens, you know, whenever you're around somebody, you almost take on their their attributes, and like, you know, you hear, and so at the very end, she's almost like she said the word idiot instead of idiot. And it's just so cute because she kind of took on his little bit. So that's a really good question, because accents can make or break. And with Vera, hers was more of a slang where she wouldn't say the G on like talking, she'd say walking. And so she wouldn't say, so I would write W-A-K, whatever I spell it, and you put the apostrophe. But on one of them, I had it so much of her slang, I had to tone it down, because it was like the reader would have been tripped up and been like, okay, this is whack. I don't think I can't understand this, like you said. So and if it's just a little bit and not a main character, then I was like, if it's just a side character, you can either put in the accent, or you can just say in a heavily accented, you know, German accent or something like that. Because if they're not going to have very much screen time, then I wouldn't waste my time in having getting a reader hiccup. You could just say he had a strong Italian accent or something like that, and then that would be all right. So
it's actually my character in the book is, one of them is Irish. And he so again, I wonder if I'll just add a little bit here and there, because he was only in Ireland as a boy. So
okay. You'd have it mixed.
Yeah, so he still has some of it, but it's like, maybe that would be easier. Scottish is I just read a really good book, and that alone, because she had so much of it in there, there were times where I had to like reread a line, right, one line 3 or 4 times, because I could not understand what he was saying. I wanted to, but I couldn't.
Right. No, that's where you can run into with the overwriting and making it authentic. It kind of trips you up.
Yeah.
But if your hero as a boy, he would probably take on a lot, because environment is everything. If he wasn't in that environment that long, or is he around people that still talk that way, or is he isolated?
Not really. He's
okay.
He's with other people, but not from Ireland.
Okay, so because that makes a difference too, because I have relatives that had some Italian friends, and they spoke amazing English, but they also spoke amazing Italian. They wanted their kids to know Italian. So the kids had both. They could talk both, but if they weren't around their parents, then they wouldn't have had that ingrained in them, if that makes any sense.
That does make sense. Yeah, that does make sense. That helps me a lot, actually. Thank you. I had one other question. Sorry. I wasn't drinking wine, by the way, for anybody who saw me doing that. It's sparkling grape juice. From yesterday. I just thought, I was like sitting here drinking the bottle. I'm like, this probably looks like wine. Anyway, I did have a question though about, sorry, my brain is foggy. What you were saying, talking about real people being in your book. I have 2 real people in my book. It's historical, but I have 2 real people in the book. And one person, he's one of the villains in the book. He has the most history around him, and he is a bad guy. He was a really bad guy. Okay, yeah, in real life. Like, he was known for that. I did look up, I have done a lot of history, and I did talk to his great-grandson, actually, was somebody who I got in contact with, and that is how he is in history, so that's how I'm portraying him.
Yep, because did it the other way, then
Yeah.
it wouldn't go, it would be wrong, historically wrong.
Yeah.
So you have the rights to do that.
Okay, I was going to ask, because of that, the other person in my book, there's not a lot about him, but he is shown in a good light in my book. Do I have to put my sources, like, do I have to, I don't know what the word I'm thinking of is, but not, yeah, do I have to cite my work for this?
When you spoke to the grandson, how was he about it? Was he cool with it?
Yeah, and he told me he wrote a biography about him. So he
Well, then I
said,
think he'd be fine. Sometimes whenever there's relatives still around, that it could get a little dicey.
yeah,
But if you have historical evidence about it, then
Yeah.
then you're good to go. And the thing with villains and other things and in our writings, we know they were a lot worse. They spoke, they cussed, they did not do very good things. And we actually probably have to tone them down for our market, for our audience, than they probably were in real life anyway. So you're probably going to portray him in a better light than he actually was.
Okay, yeah, he, like, pretty much everything about him, nothing's good, really. There's like nothing good. He was known for being a terrible person, basically.
I think you're totally fine then.
Okay, all right, that was my question. Thank you.
And there's one more thing that kind of doesn't have anything to do with word building, but I just wanted to share this real quick. This is contest season, and those who enter contests and stuff, I want to just encourage you that no matter what the results are, because when I first started, and it was actually the Red Canary that I submitted to a very popular contest, and the judge ripped it to shreds. Oh, bad. I mean, they didn't even give any, and I can take criticism. I had to learn to, but I can. But they did not give any reason why. They just like, I don't like Vera. I don't even feel sorry for her. This isn't good. They didn't put any way to help me. And when I got done reading this judge's words, I just felt like closing my laptop, because I was like, how am I ever going to get past this? It was so destructive. And luckily I had the encouragement of my husband and my critique partner. And so I was able to be like, okay, this is just one person's point of view. I mean, the other ones actually scored decent. If it wasn't for that judge's remarks, it would have gone to the finals. But I just wanted to encourage you, even those who just release books, reviews and things like that. Reading is very subjective. And if you have a bad review or a bad remarks from judges and stuff, it doesn't change your calling. It doesn't. Now, if you have a whole bunch of reviews that point out one thing and you kind of see a pattern, then maybe check it out. I've heard all growing up, eat the hay, spit out the sticks. If there's something good in that, take that. But don't let that alter your calling as a writer, because there's so many voices out there, and a lot of them are negative. You just scroll through social media, a lot are negative. But there's one voice that we need to hear, and that's God's. And if he said write it, you are the best person to write that story. That he's given you that voice, your voice. And often, you hear that David and Goliath, whenever David wanted to fight Goliath, Saul wanted him to put on his armor. And David said, I can't do this. I haven't tested these. So often when we're reading, we try to put on other people's armor, but the best thing to do is come out and be yourself. And that's how David was victorious. If he would have worn Saul's armor, he would have tripped and fell, and he probably would have died. And, it wouldn't be an exciting Bible story. So all I'm saying is you do you, and ignore the haters. So that's what I wanted to say, especially with contests emerging.
Oh, that's great. That's an encouragement to all of us. So thanks for throwing that in.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of us actually in this group that are entering the same contest.
Doing the
With-
Genesis.
Yeah, yeah.
May the judges be with you.
No,
Yeah.
honestly, I did that
That
one.
was the contest. That was the contest.
Yeah, I've heard ACFW contests, the way they judge them. I've heard this from multiple people actually, that the way they judge them just doesn't make any sense.
If you join, so this is another thing, just to remember, if you do enter that contest, someone that joins ACFW and may have just started writing yesterday could be judging your manuscript. They might
that's
not
what
have
she
any
said.
knowledge at all. So take that into consideration. They might not even be on the level that you're at, and they might. It's hard. It's really hard. I've judged the Genesis. I've judged the carols. I've judged other things. It's hard for them to get judges, and because it's volunteer, it's taking time away. So in a way, it was good of them to do that, but it's also liberal in qualifications. So just keep that in mind, and don't let anyone's discourage you from the path you're walking.
Thank you for that. I know quite a few people actually that have entered the contest before. Part of the reason I'm doing it is just because I don't want fear to stop me. I just want to do it and say I did it. I am going to pat myself on the back because I'm just going to do it. But she said the same thing, that she said actually somebody who edited her or did her notes like completely rewrote her book. And she's like, that's not at all.
No, because then you lose your voice. But I will say, I entered the Red Canary and I got that terrible review judge. I entered it the following year and it won. So there was minimum changes, minimal. I don't even know if there was any changes. All I'm saying is that it's all subjective. And a contest win is not like you made it, because I won the Genesis and it still took me how many years to even get my foot in the door. So it's not a basis of your worth. It's not a judge of your talents. It's, a nice pat on the back and something in your bio, and that's it.
Honestly, like I've what's it called? I was a finalist or semi-finalist in the Genesis, and I've done the Crown contest. And what was the other one? The one that's before the Genesis, first impressions and stuff. There's I think I had maybe one time or a couple of times where people contact me personally who was a judge, and they knew someone and they wanted to connect me with their contacts. So there's a lot of different things that you can make connections for. And it's really nice to have something to put on your query letter. Because a little biography gets really skimpy when you don't have anything. It was for me, at least.
No, that's true. My friend Amanda, you guys might know her. She wrote No, hi. The Chronicles of Roots of Wood and Stone, and she entered the first impressions, and she only had the first 5 pages, and she ended up the Tamla Hancock Murray. Is that her name? Tamla. Anyways, she was an agent, and she wanted to see her manuscript, and then she ended up representing her. So it is, if you can get there, it does go in front of agent professionals, editors, even from top, like Bethany House, Revell, they judge these contests. So it's a great avenue to get your work in front of people. And it takes a bit of courage, because it's your baby, your book baby. But if it's favorable, if it comes out for you, great. If not, it's not a judge of your talent. So, but it does help to put things in your bio, because it kind of helps them having just more than one sentence. I was there with the one sentence. Rachel writes historical Christian romance. There you go.
I actually, Tamala is the one She's one of the people
Sorry, I was gonna say something and
that's okay.
I can't press the button anymore. Sorry.
No, good.
Tamala is actually the agent that wants to see my work, and she's kind of intimidating, to be honest. She's kind of intimidating, but yeah, that's good to know that people are. I guess I didn't realize that side of it though with the contest.
Right.
I didn't really think about that side of it, but I just kind of wanted to do it and just be brave.
And those professionals are judges even for other contests, like about like the crown, and even some, if you want to, that you can enter some secular ones that have an INSPE category. And then they have INSPE editors see your work, judge that. So that's always an option too.
The
And
only
not very
thing
many.
I'll say about non-Christian ones is sometimes they don't give feedback.
Yeah, they don't.
Sorry.
He likes seeing himself. He's like, here I am. Hi. But the main thing is to just read the guidelines of whichever contest you're going to enter. And sometimes they will tell you if they offer feedback, or just, especially say it in the judging, how they're going to judge. Are they going to give you a critique, or are they just going to give you a number? Sometimes they could do both. So in that kind of, and then they often tell you who's going to be judging, not in the Genesis or the ACFW, but a lot of the other organizations that hold writing contests. That's actually their bread and butter. They get a lot of their membership and different things where they can have seminars by the entrance fees. So they'll tell you who's judging to draw you in to submit. So a lot of organizations will tell you who's judging.
Well, thanks, Rachel, so much for preparing all this, and just for your time and encouragement. And I was taking notes. So I look forward to applying some of these things with what I'm working on right now.
Oh,
So,
thank you. It was such an honor to be here and to chat with you, mommy writers.
well, I know you're doing it too, and I appreciate following you on Instagram. If any of y'all are not following Rachel, she has really interesting historical posts that always make me chuckle. But then I also appreciate just some of the things you share about your journey as a mom, and especially with your daughter's challenges. Just I love just seeing your heart about that, and how the Lord is just using you in her life, but also using her, like you were saying, just how she's helped you to be a better writer and see different things. So that's an encouragement to me, just watching you navigate all of that.
Thank you. That means a lot. It's hard to find time to write sometimes, but you're a mama first, and then you're the writer.
Yes, I think we all understand that. So, well, great. I hope you have a great night, and thanks again for joining us.
Thank you,
Thank
Rachel.
you. Bye.